Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Interception. To start off this list today, let's talk about one of the very first electronic interceptions because, to be honest, this was happening sooner than I would have thought, but in a very different way than what we are used to now. Let's set the stage and take it back to the beginning of the 1900s, the first year of the new century. We are in the midst of the Boer War, which lasted from 1899 until 1902. Prior to this war, the British Royal Navy had installed wireless sets that had been produced by Marconi onto their ships. This allowed the British Army to be able to use some limited wireless signaling and communication. During the war, however, nearing the end, things took a bit of a turn. While the British had captured and were holding cities and towns, there were still many dispersed Boer commandos who were out there and were taking to different tactics. They began a guerrilla war, and part of that was by intercepting telegraph messages. Not only did they intercept important messages, but they were even able to capture some of the sets to be able to use them themselves. In our number 9 spot today, we have Mobilization. The Russo-Japanese War is one that lasted for a little over a year, spanning from 1904 to 1905. While the war was mainly between Russia and Japan, the signal interception I want to talk about today came from a British ship. As the Russian fleet was preparing for conflict with Japan in 1904, a British ship called the HMS Diana was stationed in the Suez Canal. This canal is located in Egypt and it connects the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea. While stationed here, the HMS Diana ended up intercepting Russian naval wireless signals that were being sent out. These signals were apparently intended to signal for the mobilization of the fleet. In our number 8 spot today, we have the BBC. So for this one, we have to be on the same page for what a numbers station is. Basically, they're shortwave radio stations, and the transmissions or broadcasts are usually certain numbers or other repetitive things which are believed to be aimed to address intelligence officers who are operating in foreign countries. So for this one, we are taking it back to 1983 when the BBC, yes, the British Broadcasting Corporation, received a letter from a listener they had in Andorra. This listener had written into the World Service Waveguide program to complain that during her attempt at listening, she was interrupted by a female voice that was reading out numbers in English, and she wanted to know what this interference was. While the corporation gave a regular, non-sinister answer to the confused woman, after more research was done into the case, people aren't quite convinced. Many people who know much more about these things and recognize the patterns seen in number stations are fairly certain that this interruption was a numbers station that was being broadcast on a random frequency that just happened to intercept with this woman's BBC program. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Duga radar. So for this one, we are talking about a huge missile defense radio structure called Duga 3. This structure is suspected of having been wildly over budget, and it was the source of many complaints after it was built. The systems were extremely powerful and broadcast in short-wave radio bands. They would appear without warning and sounded like a sharp, repetitive tapping noise, and they would disrupt things like legitimate broadcasts, amateur radio, commercial aviation communications, and utility transmissions, which all led to there being international complaints, and at the time, people didn't know what it was. This led people to think that this signal was actually being used for things such as Soviet mind control or weather control experiments. In our number 6 spot today, we have World War I. For this one, we are taking it back to the First World War and discussing something that really changed the way we use wireless communications. Basically, during the First World War, British forces were able to intercept German radio communications. With this newfound ability, they were able to learn about the plans that German forces had and used this to their advantage. Of course, later when this was found out, no one wanted a similar thing to happen to them, but the technology was so valuable they couldn't just give up on it. This is said to be what led to the use of cryptography, which was intended to conceal the messages being sent out, and thus cryptoanalysis, which originated to get around this new extra layer of protection, was born. In our number 5 spot today, we have Cobra Mist. This is the code name that was used to describe the experimental over-the-horizon radar that ended up being stationed at Orford Ness, England. It was originally supposed to be stationed in Turkey, where it could cover most of the European Soviet airspace, but Turkey had some objections and weren't all that pleased with the idea. This led to the site being moved to the UK, where it offers a view of most of Eastern Europe. The system was built through the 1960s and into the 1970s, so you think it would have been this amazing success, but things went more than a little awry when it was first turned on. When switched on, it began having these noise problems, and despite best efforts, no one could figure out where these problems were coming from, which led to the project being shut down in 1973. In our number 4 spot today we have UVB-76. This sound apparently began to happen in the 1980s when a radio tower just north of Moscow began transmitting a random and seemingly bizarre assortment of beeps, but in 1992 the sound began to change. In that year it suddenly switched to a buzzing sort of sound that would last about a second, and this sound would occur somewhere between 21 to 34 times every minute. This strange routine would be interrupted once every few weeks by a male voice which would then be reciting a string of numbers and words, mostly Russian sounding names like Anna and Nikolai. The buzzing wasn't necessarily always exactly the same, as the tone would switch and there would be different intervals between the buzzes, but one thing that was always consistent is that every hour on the hour, the station would have 2 quick consecutive buzzes. To make things stranger, in June of 2010 and also in August of that year, the station briefly stopped sending out signals despite it having been constantly for years and years. At the end of August in 2010, the station again changed and there began to be different shuffling sounds and thuds that could be heard in the background, and often little snippets of the Dance of the Little Swans from Swan Lake would also interrupt the broadcast. While we obviously know that these sounds are coming from a radio broadcast and we can make out what some of the sounds we're hearing are, we have absolutely no idea what purpose they serve, where they are coming from, or what they might mean. Right now the best guess is that these are secret messages that are being transmitted to secret agents. If that is the case, it's likely we might never know exactly what is being discussed in these broadcasts. In our number 3 spot today we have the Lincolnshire Poacher. The Lincolnshire Poacher, which is a British numbers station, was being transmitted from Cyprus. It began transmitting in the middle of the 1960s and was in operation until quite recently in 2008. This station is believed to have been operated by the British Secret Intelligence Service, and the reason behind its name is because it is said that the station commonly used bars from the English folk song of the same name. There would often be a female voice heard reciting a group of 5 numbers, with the final number in the group being read in a higher pitched voice. It is believed that the station was meant to be communicating with undercover agents operating in the Middle East. Back in 2006, however, this broadcasting was interrupted by the North Korean Foreign Language Service, Voice of Korea. This language service began to broadcast on the same frequency as the Lincolnshire Poacher, which some believe may have been intentional. In our number 2 spot today we have Anna Montes. For this one, we're taking a bit of a turn and talking about someone who used secret signals and transmissions in order to spy on the US for Cuba. Anna Montes is a former American senior analyst at the Defense Intelligence Agency, and for 17 years she used encrypted messages to receive information and communicate with the Cuban government in order to spy on the United States. In the charging documents, American federal prosecutors said, quote, "Montes communicated with the Cuban intelligence service through encrypted messages and received her instructions through shortwave encrypted transmissions from Cuba. In addition, Montes communicated by coded numeric pager messages with the Cuban intelligence service by public telephones located in the District of Columbia and Maryland. The codes included 'I received message' or 'danger'." Anna was arrested by the FBI at her office on September 21st, 2001, and part of the reason why is because she apparently had classified information on the US military's pending invasion of Afghanistan, and people were worried that she might go on to further reveal this information. While Anna pleaded guilty to her crimes, which could have carried a death sentence, she received 25 years and her tentative release date is January 8th, 2023. In our number 1 spot today we have Atencion. This is a number station that ended up being the first to be officially and publicly accused of transmitting messages to spies. This station was the center of an espionage trial, and US prosecutors claimed that the station was sending numbered codes for the accused to write down using Sony handheld shortwave receivers and then decode using a computer program. This gave them their next instructions that were to be followed in their spying plans. During this trial, the FBI testified that they had entered one of the spies' apartments and copied the decryption code that was used for the messages sent from the station. Using this code, they were able to unveil the secret messages being sent out, which they read in court. Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have a little bit different. One morning in 2008, Lina woke up in a life that was similar to the one she was living when she went to sleep, but was certainly not the same. At first it was just things like her bed sheets and pajamas, but when she got to work, things began to escalate. Lina realized that her office wasn't her office and that she worked in the same building, but in a completely different department. She had never even met her boss before, so she knew this couldn't have been a moment where she just got lost or confused. When she returned home after the workday, she was met by her ex-boyfriend, only to find that he was apparently her current boyfriend. She tried to find the person that she had been dating for months, but he didn't even seem to exist in this new life and world that she now found herself in. Lina began to seek psychiatric help because she was fearing she was having some sort of nervous breakdown, but all tests revealed that she seemed to be of sound body and mind. The strange occurrences continued when Lina asked her family how her sister was doing. Lina knew that her sister had recently had shoulder surgery and wanted to check in, but when she asked her family, they were baffled by her claims and insisted that there was no surgery that had taken place on anyone in the family. Lina couldn't find any answers to her situation and was having no luck with a medical explanation either. She was convinced that she went to sleep one night and woke up in a parallel universe that was altered slightly by small decisions that she had made. Honestly, I can't really think of anything else that would cause all of these strange occurrences to happen all at once. In our number 9 spot today, we have the dream. This story starts off with the person explaining that a couple times a month when they dream, they head off to another parallel universe. They say that while in this universe, they are either in their hometown or are in Dallas, Texas. I'm not sure why, but it's their journey, not mine. They then go on to say that while they know these cities and know where everything is, something about them is just off. Like they're really run-down versions of what they're like here in this universe. The houses and businesses are run down, paint is peeling off the walls, it just generally looks like an abandoned city, even though it's occupied. So this one particular dream is what got them really confused about this alternate reality. Basically in this dream, they were living in this one house. They didn't live there in their awake reality and they had never been there before, but in this particular dream, this is where they lived. They noticed that their house was the only one on the block that had a rear garage. In the end, since they were in this rundown version of the city, they ended up coming into conflict with some bad people who were there, and they found themselves in this alternate reality getting shot. They then woke up with a really bad headache, they took some Advil and decided to look up the house that they had lived in this dream. When they did, they found that not only was it a real place, but that in this awake reality, it was also the only house on the block that had a rear garage. What do you guys think? Is this just a weird coincidence, or are their dreams taking them to an actual different reality? In our number 8 spot today, we have the doppelganger. This story comes from someone who swears that they saw themselves, like as if they were another person walking past. They wrote, quote, "I'm from a very dry, hot state in the US and was visiting California on a trip with my wife. While eating out, we both witnessed a person that looked exactly like me. Same typical mid-fade and head dents inherited from my father, same body type. I saw the side profile from the back as they walked away from view, and it was my exact face. My wife had a direct view but could not remember directly what my face looked like, but noted that she was noticing similarities from the body to the head, even the way I walked. Couldn't believe what we saw. Any thoughts?" I mean, my thoughts are that maybe this was your other self from a parallel universe, or maybe it was just your twin from right here on Earth. I mean, they say that everyone has one, right? I just can't get past how it doesn't stop at them just looking alike though, like how they act and walk as well. In our number 7 spot today, we have the boss swap. Okay, this story comes from Reddit and it starts off with the OP giving us a little context and telling us that they work at a small processing plant in Texas, that they're 22 years old, and that they have been working there for about 4 months now. At the plant, they usually help the truck drivers with paperwork and inspections, and since most of the offices in the building have windows, from their office they can see the production line and they can see clearly into their boss's office and their supervisor's office, which are close together. So basically one day at work they hear the bell ring and they go to help the person at the door. They then write, quote, "As I got up, I could clearly see my supervisor working on some bill of landings. I get to the door that leads to the shipping area, the driver lets me know why he is here, and I go back inside, head to my office to get the bills for him, and head outside so he can sign them. As of now, everything is normal, but things are about to take a huge turn. As I walk through the shipping door, I have a clear view of my supervisor. It's very normal for me to hand him the signed bills, and I'm walking towards his office. I can clearly see him working on the BOLs. As I get closer to the door of his office, there's a spot outside of his office where you can't see at all into the inside, and then as I open the door, he wasn't there anymore. Instead, I come to find a lady in her 50s, black hair, and about 5'9". I screamed WTF, and she looks at me in confusion and asks me what's wrong. I explain the situation to her. She seems perplexed by the story, but lets me know that she has been in this office all of the time, that Juan was never my supervisor, and she has been the supervisor for years. Now, I remember clearly when I first started working, Juan was presented as my supervisor. His name was on the door of his office, and him and I were getting along very well. I've asked everyone here at my company and they have all said the same thing. Rosie has been supervisor for years. I guess I switched universes because now even Juan's name isn't on his door and he barely speaks to me. I truly have no idea what could have happened here, but all I know is that basically having it happen in front of your eyes would have been so confusing. In our number 6 spot today we have The Sound. This story comes from Reddit and it starts off with the OP stating that when they were 8 years old they were in a car accident and they believed that they died. They then go on to write, quote, "There was this sound, a note playing non-stop. It's similar to the sound of the machine when you flatline, but it was more instrumental. I've never forgotten, and when I asked my family they said we were in an accident, just not in the place I remember. Is it possible to die and cross over to an alternate parallel world? That sound though, it felt like it was telling me to let go, but I could not." This story definitely had me intrigued, but what got me hooked even further was the top comment on the post, which read, quote, "Quantum immortality is what people are calling it. Others have experienced this too. You just end up in a slightly different world." Quantum immortality is something that I certainly had never heard of before, but it truly is quite an interesting and fascinating concept. What do you guys think? Is something else, something bigger at play here? In our number 5 spot today we have Double Moms. This story comes from Reddit and it actually had my mind boggled when I read it, so I had to include it today too. They wrote, quote, "Back in 2012 I was staying with my mom for the last couple months of my pregnancy. She always left for work at about 7 a.m. and would wake me up while she was getting ready. This particular morning was the same thing. I'd see her out and lock the deadbolt behind her. I went into her room to watch my normal show as usual. I was watching TV at least 30 minutes before I had to use the restroom again. While I'm doing just that, my mom opened the door on me, stared at me for 3 to 4 seconds, and then closed the door. Within the time it took me to get up and wash my hands, she was gone. The deadbolt was still locked and her car wasn't in the driveway. I called to see where she was and she told me she was just pulling into work. Now today if I ask her about it, she doesn't recall ever telling me about it. What happened that day?" Honestly, I have no answer as to what could have possibly happened that day, but it all sounds very weird and unsettling, to say the least. In our number 4 spot today we have The Past Life. This is a story about a feeling someone has had for most of their life, and that is the feeling that they had previously lived another life in which they were a father, despite them only being a kid at the time of beginning to have this feeling. They say, quote, "I remember being around 40 years old with a wife and 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, and then one day I just woke up as a child and my past was all just a big blur with random memories that would come to me here or there. It made no sense. My parents said that I used to tell stories about when I was a dad and they would just laugh it off and be like, oh, that's just your imagination. But deep down I genuinely did have these strange memories of a past life." They then go on to talk about how a trip to Disney World with their family left them even more confused, as they had memories of their other family and them at Disney World despite them being only 4 years old at the time. They could remember where things were, where certain rides were, and they were able to show their family how to get around. In the end they wrote, quote, "After a while I stopped telling these stories of when I was a dad because my siblings would always make fun of me for it. Eventually I just started going on with my life and haven't thought much about it since then. Although I wish I did because the memories back then were so much more vivid and real than they are now." Does anybody have any similar stories? Does this ring any bells for anyone? I know this might sound stupid, but I genuinely am just interested if anyone else has experienced something like this. I don't know. I don't think it sounds stupid, I just wonder what it could all possibly mean. In our number 3 spot today we have The Inventors. Okay, this story is about a disappearance that is said to have happened under some extremely suspicious circumstances. Basically, an inventor named William Cantello was working on a new invention that was said to be a rapid-firing machine gun. One day he was ready to head out and sell the idea, so he told his sons he was going to market to sell it, and he set off, but sadly this was the last time anyone saw him. Investigations by authorities and private investigators turned up little to nothing. Some suggested that perhaps he had gone to America, but there was no record or anything that could possibly prove this theory. The case went cold, but the plot began to thicken about 20 years later when an American man named Hiram Maxim invented a rapid-firing machine gun that he called the Maxim gun. The invention, however, wasn't the only similar thing to William. In fact, Hiram bore an uncanny resemblance to William, so much so that William's sons actually mistook him for their father. If all of this wasn't bizarre enough, in an autobiography of Hiram's, he spoke about how there was a man who was impersonating him and how he had been dealing with the effects of being mistaken for William for quite a while. Were these two the same people but in different realities? What other possible answers could there be for this very, very strange mystery? In our number 2 spot today, we have the little sister. Okay, this is a story that might be a parallel universe example, or maybe it's some sort of time slip, or maybe it's some other totally unexplainable thing. They wrote, quote, "This is all true, it still makes me confused. I was 5 or 6 years old. It was Christmas Eve. The whole family was gathered at my grandmother's house. The children slept in an upstairs bedroom while waiting for midnight to eat and unwrap the presents. All of the lights were on in the house except the bedroom lights. The parents had left the bedroom door open so that we could hear them and get some light. I remember my 2 cousins asleep. We were in the same bed. I couldn't sleep. At one point I saw a woman standing in the doorway. She was tall and thin, fair complexion, platinum blonde hair, bobbed, a bright red lipstick. She leaned into the door opening to take a look. I'd never seen this woman, but I thought maybe she was a friend of the family. The same night I told my mother about it, and she told me that she had never seen this woman. I always found this moment weird, but I told myself that I had only dreamed it. Except that 4 to 5 years later, my little sister was born. Today she is 20 years old and looks exactly the same as the woman I saw. My grandmother still lives in the same place. I have never seen this woman visiting my family again. I wonder if there wasn't a glitch that caused 2 temporalities to overlap. The explanation for the dream is the most logical, and the look of my little sister, which matches that of the woman I saw, could be a fluke. I just have a weird feeling about it. In our number 1 spot today, we have memories. This story starts off with the storyteller explaining that when they were 7 years old, they had a brain injury that they needed to have surgery for, but they remember, for some reason, being able to spectate the entire surgery as if it wasn't happening to them. At the time, since they were a child, they just assumed this was normal. That, quote, "the gas gives you a spectate option." As their life progresses on, they begin to realize that they have memories from really early on in their life, like being able to recall details of family trips that they were on when they were just 2 years old and hadn't really seen pictures of. This is all interesting to say the least, but this is where things take a turn. They then go on to explain that in their late teens, early 20s, they start having more memories, but these ones aren't their own. They write, quote, "I was hanging out with my family when my aunt mentioned something about a server being so grateful for the tip they had left when they'd gone out for dinner the night before. I responded by saying something like, 'Oh yeah, I was living off of tips when I was a waitress.' Everyone stared at me for a second and started laughing, thinking I was joking. I have real memories of being a struggling, starving waitress at a crappy pub. I then realized that I've only ever worked in offices after university and my family is well off. I would never have been struggling. Recently I was video chatting with my sister when I asked her if she remembered our friend D and told her how much I miss him because he's fully dead. He is not. She started sending me screenshots of his social media pages. He's a dad now. I also remember 2 of our other friends being brother and sister. We'd spent our teen years visiting each other's houses. Their mother picked me and her up from ballet a few times, with both of them in the car, both calling her mom, both in all family pictures. Nope, they're not related and barely know each other. I'm starting to feel insane. I have random memories that are definitely not mine, and it doesn't make sense. I honestly don't know what to think of this story, but it really is captivating. I can't imagine what experiencing all of that would be like, and I wonder what exactly is going on here.
Kicking off the list at number 10. The upsweep. Remember last July when the ocean was on fire in the Gulf of Mexico due to a gas leak, and we all watched like, what's going on? What is this? Why is there a hole to hell? Just all of a sudden it appeared? Well, 5 hours later, the company resumed pumping gas again. So sometimes when the ocean screams at us, we have to listen. Even if we're not exactly sure what it is we're hearing. Sound travels much faster underwater than it does in air, more than 4 times as fast. You ever crack your knuckles underwater? Try it when you get a chance. Sounds like a war zone underneath there. See, because sound travels so quickly, it's hard to find out where the signals or events are happening in the deep sea. The upsweep is an unidentified sound that was heard throughout the entire Pacific ocean. Again, quite loud. When the Pacific Marine Environmental Laboratory fired up its sound surveillance system back in 1991, these sounds were heard. This sound happens in real time as well. It's not sped up or altered in any way. These upsweeping sounds last a few seconds each ping. The source was roughly located around New Zealand and South America, and it peaks around autumn and spring. So whatever it is, well, it's probably hibernating. Number 9, shifting plates. I remember this back in 2013. I hope this rings a bell for some of you watching. In 2013, a woman in British Columbia, over in Canada, heard a trumpet sound, a low, slow, like a trumpet, or so she thought. At first, nothing came from these claims or videos, just a few comments saying, that's weird, which it is, but then it started to happen in areas all over the world, from Texas to Norway, so something's going on. It's the same slow, loud trumpet sound. Well, it turns out this sound was coming from the ocean this whole time, because again, in 2018, a little more recently, the same low-pitched humming noise was heard in Hawaii, Kenya, and then Chile. So what we're hearing all these years are shifting tectonic plates. That's our best guess at this point. Undersea volcanoes, sure, just moving some deep-sea furniture around. It's gotta be loud. Some folk believe that there's another dimension underneath the ocean floor, so maybe this is just a door opening and closing. Maybe this is the bouncer being like, oh, come on in, okay. Either way, I'm good here on land, never going down there. Number 8, Quacker. Quaker oats, Quacker oats, the Quacker. Not to be confused with the Kraken, he's a little bit different. This is the Quacker. A loud quack was heard during the Cold War, so a little bit older. It was recorded while Soviet Navy ballistic missile submarines were heading through North Atlantic and Arctic waters. They heard quacking or ribbit, something like some sort of deep sea duck. Whenever submarines passed a certain area, this loud quack would come from deep below, and it came from an object that was moving around. That's the mysterious part. That's why we threw it on our list today. The Soviets thought they were overhearing secret US tech, you know, like I guess some deep sea duck radar. I've heard rumors of that one. That's good. That was in a James Bond movie for sure. Scientists believe that it came from a giant squid, which is somehow more alarming than the ocean floor. Number 7, underwater underworld. Back in 2018, a diver was exploring flooded caves in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. They were on the beach having a good time, then they saw this opening about 1.5 feet wide, barely enough to fit one person, and this diver was like, They went through. That's terrifying. First of all, bravo, hats off, that's extremely brave. But then they found this underwater tunnel that connected the Saskatoon Cave and the Dos Ojos cave system. So this is a huge discovery, because now this is considered one of the largest underwater cave systems in the world. In total, it runs about 347 kilometers long. I can't even fathom how long that is underwater. This cave has been untouched since the last ice age, rightfully so. And the 200 pockets inside are filled with bones, Mayan altars, fossils belonging to now extinct animals. It's basically a time capsule from 15,000 years ago. So if you're diving through small cave entrances, don't go alone, or you might get stuck in time, apparently. Or you might find thousands of bones, or a possible entrance to the underworld. Yeah, that's also a hot rumor for this underwater Mayan cave system. I forgot my flippers. Can't go, sorry guys. Have fun though, sounds like a great time. Number 6, Titan Ocean. This one is literally out of this world. Coming from one of the many, many moons of Saturn, Titan, around 10 years ago, NASA's Cassini spacecraft detected water underneath its massive shell of ice. That's pretty exciting. To quote a Cassini team member, the search for water is an important goal in solar system exploration, and now we've spotted another place where it's abundant. NASA has also detected low-frequency radio waves on this moon before, so perhaps there's something going on under the space sea. Our own ocean is mysterious enough, let alone receiving signals from an ocean in space. No thanks, I don't want to even think about what's up there. Number 5, the Kraken. Jack Sparrow's worst nightmare. Is it real? Is the Kraken actually a real thing? Where does this come from? Well, maybe. The giant squid is not that far-fetched. Some creatures in the ocean are massive as is, like for example, this manta ray off the coast of Trinidad. If the internet didn't exist and I saw this in real life, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. So of course, many sailors reported seeing the Kraken at one point or another. The ocean's terrifying. For ages now, sailors specifically from Norway and Greenland have all continued to share eyewitness reports of a giant sea monster, the Kraken. Apparently it had tentacles big enough to pull you and your mateys right off of the ship. In 1857, Danish naturalist Japetus Steenstrup found a large squid beak, and then soon after, he was sent parts of another specimen from the Bahamas, so people were trying to help him out. So he concluded with all these gross puzzle pieces that the Kraken is real, and it's part of a species of giant squid called Architeuthis dux, which is Latin for ruling squid. Very little is known about giant squids, seeing as they're so hard to track, but we did get a photo of one back in 2005 and a video of one in 2013. Number 4, the whistle. If you can whistle, honestly, enjoy it. I've been trying for years, all I got is the one note. I'm like a bird. My lips are way too dry and weak, apparently. Nothing like this whistle, recorded in July 1997. This whistle was picked up by one hydrophone, meaning that scientists now can't pinpoint its location in the ocean, so we have no idea where it came from. But it was very loud, so we heard it. Somewhere in the Pacific, just, you know, somewhere out there. Good luck, just listen. That's terrifying. What do you think this is, really? The NOAA has compared the sound to volcanic activity, but because it could have come from literally anywhere, it could have been an iceberg, it could have been hydrothermal vents, it could have been the Kraken. Who knows? What do you think? Number 3, the green flash. I watch way too many superhero movies, so this next one had me pacing around my living room for a hot minute. Who is this? Who is this guy? Who's this green flash man? The green flash phenomena happens in the ocean. So far, we've only observed the flash above water, but I'm sure there's some mysterious happenings going on below, you know? I'm sure there's a few confused fish over there when it happens. This happens during sunset and sunrise. Best time to see the green flash is on a clear evening over water, and the air must be clean. So if you're in a polluted city, you're like, damn it. The reason we see a green flash is because of our boy, Roy G. Biv. This is the G in Roy G. Biv. Sunlight reflects off the atmosphere like a big old prism, and in turn, for thousands of years, humans have probably been like, what was that? I just saw a green flash. I keep seeing it every night. What is going on? They're probably so confused for thousands of years. No, it's not a Justice League villain. It's just the sunset. Number 2, HMS Daedalus. This 19th century warship belonged to the Royal Navy. It was this big class beauty equipped with 19 guns, and it launched at Woolwich Dockyard in 1844. It was a big deal. 4 years later, Captain McEway, along with his officers and crew, all set sail to St. Helena, but during their commute, they were visited. Yeah, this is why we have the guns on the side of the ship. If any trouble comes along, be it pirates, whatever the case, we're now equipped. Thing is, this visitor didn't come from the sides or the front or the back, it came from below, in the form of a 60-foot long serpent. And it hung around for 20 minutes, apparently, with its head breaking the surface of the water occasionally. The captain said it was so close under the ship that if it was one of his own crew members under there, he could have easily recognized their face. That's how clear the water was. It wasn't choppy or cloudy, it was a normal day, otherwise. So do we think 60-foot long sea snakes exist? Who's to say? I mean, considering this list, I'd say yeah. We barely explored our own ocean. And finally, number 1, the Milky Sea phenomenon. This one you can see from space, so we're leaving the biggest and brightest for last, folks. The Milky Sea phenomenon was first observed back in 1864 by Captain Raphael Semmes. Captain Raphael Semmes journaled it aboard his CSS Alabama. He wrote about passing from the deep blue waters into a patch of water so bright that it startled him. The whole face of nature seemed to change, and with a little stretch of imagination, the Alabama might have been conceived to be a phantom ship lighted up by the sickly and unearthly glare of a phantom sea. That's not an exaggeration as well. This phenomena is something out of Avatar, really. It's so alien-like. Bioluminescence is part of the reason for this ghostly bright blue appearance, but sailors say there is something sinister about it as well. To this day, we don't fully understand how bioluminescence works, but it's continuing to blow our minds. For example, we just discovered a new shark. We just found a glowing shark. A glowing shark, what is happening here? The Milky Sea phenomenon is bigger than a glowy shark, and it can span around 100,000 square miles, so you'll see it. If it's around, you'll probably see it. It lasts for a few nights too, so I don't blame these sailors for getting spooked out. In 2005, we got low orbit satellites to snap a pic of this phenomenon, but even so, we don't fully understand why it happens. But we're trying our best.
At number 10, Mars quake. On May 5th, 2018, NASA launched the InSight Mars lander, and it was designed to give the planet its first thorough checkup since being formed. This technology allows us to collect lots of data, like hearing what's going on inside of the planet. Compared to Earth, the interior of Mars is fairly quiet, but it still experiences quakes underneath the surface. The InSight lander is equipped with a seismometer called Seismic Experiment for Interior Structure, or they just call it SEIS, which picks up on the different vibrations of the planet and allows scientists to hear what the heck is going on inside. In April 2019, the SEIS got its first hit, which turned out to be, for the first time ever, a Mars quake. This is the first recorded trembling that appears to have come from inside the planet as opposed to being caused by forces above the surface like wind. Most people are familiar with quakes on Earth, which are caused by the moving of tectonic plates. Mars does not have tectonic plates like the Moon, but they both still experience quakes. In this case, they're caused by a continual process of cooling and contraction that creates stress. The stress then builds over time until strong enough to break the crust. The audio of the quake is very ominous sounding, almost like a really strong wind, but since space is so silent, it makes things super ominous. It's not so terrifying until you remember it's coming from inside of the planet. Number 9. The Sun. Considering space is such a quiet place, it really seems like everything in it makes a lot of noise. The Sun is no exception. I was totally happy before this video not thinking about the Sun making noise, but now I'm afraid it's all I will be able to think of. The Sun has so much energy coming out of it that it vibrates on multiple frequencies at once, which then cause a humming sound. To me, the Sun sounds like one of those singing bowls used in meditation. It's almost soothing until you remember that you're listening to the Sun vibrate. NASA explained how we're able to hear the Sun, and basically when anything material moves, waves travel through it, and the same thing happens inside the Sun. Those waves are bouncing around the Sun, and if our eyes were sensitive enough, we could actually see this jiggle. Since our human eyes are so useless and weak, scientists turned that jiggle into a sound. Like Mars, we want to know what's going on inside, and thanks to the Sun vibrating at many different frequencies, we can use those vibrations to look inside. Now scientists can see huge rivers of solar material flowing around and are starting to finally understand the layers of the Sun. Number 8. Crossing Saturn's rings. October 15, 1997 marks the day that the Cassini-Huygens was launched. Commonly just called Cassini, was a space research mission by NASA, the European Space Agency, and the Italian Space Agency to send a space probe to study the planet Saturn and its systems, including its rings and natural satellites. Cassini was the fourth space probe to visit Saturn and the first to enter its orbit, where it stayed from 2004 to 2007. During this mission, one of the things they discovered, unfortunately, was what it sounds like to cross the planet's rings. Saturn's rings are made up of billions of small chunks of ice and rock coated with other materials such as dust. The audio clip sounds mainly like static, but as it goes, you can hear more action and the sound becomes more intense. It's almost like the sound of a really heavy rain. Cassini's initial dive into the void of Saturn's rings was on April 26, 2017, when the sounds were recorded. Not only was this our first time hearing what this section of space sounds like, it's the first time a spacecraft has ever ventured into the gap between the planet and its rings. The sound is so loud it's hard to believe that scientists were surprised to see just how empty it was. At number 7, Earth Whistle. This sound is terrifying because it sounds like something straight out of a video game. Space is far from empty, and as we are learning today, it's not very quiet either. Space contains energetic charged particles governed by magnetic and electric fields, and it behaves like nothing we've ever experienced on Earth before. Particles are continually tossed to and fro by the motion of various electromagnetic waves known as plasma waves. The plasma waves create a rhythmic noise that, with the right tools, we can hear across space. Basically, the waves create distinct sounds depending on the plasma they travel through. For example, the region tight around the Earth called the plasmasphere is pretty dense with cold plasma. Waves traveling inside the region might sound much different to those outside of it. Beyond the plasmasphere, where it's warmer, waves can create a high-pitched chirping sound like a flock of noisy birds. If you look up Earth Whistle, it sounds like the classic laser gun sound effect, or like crickets and frogs at night. Either way, it sounds fake, and it's hard to believe it was recorded right by Earth in space. Number 6. Jupiter. Everyone thinks aliens live on Mars. Due to its similarities to Earth, maybe it is the one housing another life form. I would agree it makes a lot of sense that aliens are hanging out on Mars. That was until I heard what it sounds like on Jupiter. I mentioned earlier Cassini, the spacecraft that was sent on a mission to check out Saturn. Well, Cassini had a historic 20-year mission to Saturn, and while in space it stopped by Jupiter to receive a gravitational boost en route to its final destination. Cassini flew by Jupiter in January 2001. While it was flying by, it captured some spooky alien-like radio signals. Of all the sounds on this list, the ones on Jupiter sound the most like aliens. The other sounds were spooky, but this one sounds almost animated, perhaps like a conversation even. Apparently the sound comes from waves that were derived from an interaction of the magnetic field that surrounds Jupiter and the solar wind of particles speeding away from the sun. At number 5, unusually close signals. signals. There are bright, fleeting blasts of radio waves coming from the vicinity of a nearby galaxy, and they are only pushing one of astronomy's biggest mysteries even further from an answer. The repeating bursts of energy seem to be coming from an ancient group of stars called a globular cluster. What's so special about that? Well, it's one of the last places astronomers expected to find them. These extremely bright and extremely brief bursts of radio waves are known as fast radio bursts, or FRBs. Originating billions of light years away, the FRBs have defied explanation since they were first spotted in 2007. Based on observations, scientists infer that the bursts are powered by young, short-lived cosmic objects called magnetars. That was until a couple of years ago when a fast radio burst was discovered and traced to a globular cluster about 11.7 million light years away near the neighboring spiral galaxy M81. At number 4, space roar. In space, nobody can hear you scream, but scientists did pick up on what they described as a roar. I don't know if you could find a scarier sound coming from space. Back in 2006, scientists began looking for distant signals in the universe using a complex instrument attached to a huge balloon that was sent to space. The instrument is called the Absolute Radiometer for Cosmology, Astrophysics, and Diffuse Emissions, or just ARCADE. The ARCADE was able to pick up radio waves from the heat of distant stars, but none of them were expecting what they heard next. The instrument listened from a height of about 23 miles, and it picked up a signal that was 6 times louder than what it had originally been expected. They tried to source the loud sound, but soon discovered it was too loud to be early stars and far louder than the predicted combined radio emission from distant galaxies, so basically scientists were stumped. Even today, we still have no idea what the source of the roar was. Apparently, on top of not knowing the source, the mysterious sound is so loud that it's making the efforts to search for signals from the first stars formed after the Big Bang quite difficult. It's just out there, covering up our view of early stars and being emitted by something we can't yet imagine. Number 3. Space heartbeat mystery. Mysterious radio signals from space have been known to repeat, but a few years back, for the first time, researchers noticed a pattern in a series of bursts coming from a single source 500 million light years away from Earth. Fast radio bursts, or FBRs, which I mentioned before, are millisecond-long bursts of radio waves in space. Individual radio bursts emit once and don't repeat, but repeating FRBs are known to send out the waves multiple times. Usually when they repeat, it's sporadic or in a cluster according to previous observations. Between September 16, 2018 and October 30, 2019, researchers with the Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment, or CHIME, detected a pattern in bursts occurring every 16.35 days. Over the course of 4 days, the signal would release a burst or two each hour, then it would go silent for another 12 days. In 2019, CHIME detected the sources of 8 new repeating fast radio bursts, including this signal. The repeating signal was traced to a massive spiral galaxy around 500 million light years away. Researchers hoped that by tracing the origin of these mysterious bursts, they would be able to determine what caused them, but to this day, scientists still have no idea. I know I mentioned aliens a lot, but come on. If anything is another life form trying to get in communication with us, it has to be this. What else would be able to stay so consistent in space? Number 2. Jupiter's bow shock. Well, we all know now that I think Jupiter is home to aliens already, but after hearing Jupiter's bow shock, I don't know if I'm more or less convinced. The sun emits a steady stream of charged solar wind, which can be repelled by a very strong magnetic force, like that of the magnetic field of a larger planet. When the solar wind meets a strong magnetic force surrounding a planet, it's deflected, and all its energy of motion is converted to thermal energy. This energized region is known as a bow shock. The name is borrowed from a similar phenomenon in aerodynamics. The sound of passing through this region was recorded by the Voyager spacecraft. Voyager 1 and 2 were both launched into space in 1977 to take advantage of a favorable alignment of Jupiter and Saturn. When the spacecraft encountered the bow shock, there was a very sudden burst of intense low-frequency emissions extending over a wide range of frequencies. To me, the bow shock on Jupiter sounds like the little aliens are just chilling, chattering away, and then explosion. It sounds like something big blows up, and the tone of it is much deeper than the high pitch of Jupiter itself. Once again, remembering that the sound was recorded in space makes it even crazier. And at number 1, black hole. Okay, of all the sounds you can hear from space, a black hole is the scariest. I think also just in general, black holes are one of the scariest things that exist. First of all, what the heck is a black hole? Well, according to NASA, a black hole is a place in space where gravity pulls so much that even light cannot get out. Horrifying. The gravity is so strong because the matter has been squeezed into a tiny space. This can happen when a star is dying. Because no light can get out, people can't see black holes. They are invisible. Space telescopes with special tools can help find black holes. The special tools can see how stars that are very close to black holes act differently than other stars. The sound that a black hole makes is even more haunting. I've never heard a more fitting sound effect for a spine-chilling scene in a horror movie. It sounds like what I think hundreds of ghosts and spirits would sound like if they were to circle around a spooky dungeon. Maybe it's just me, but I seriously think it's the sound they used in Harry Potter when they were at Azkaban.
Kicking off the list at number 10, the Bell Island boom. Back in 1978, Bell Island, located just northwest of Newfoundland, a loud boom was heard. It was powerful enough to shake houses. This thing caused property damage, right? It's pretty intense. There's a pretty large group of individuals that believe this was some sort of supernatural phenomena, of some sorts, of course. On a Sunday night, right in the middle of Jig's dinner, this flash of lightning just shook the land. Darren Bickford, who was just 12 years old at the time, was riding his bike back home to catch his favorite TV show. Pre-Netflix problems, we love those. As I approached the end of our big boom, rather, historically correct, shook residents. It shook residents figuratively and literally. Resident Kim Owen reported to the Sun Gazette news outlet that at first she didn't think much about it. That's until a friend of hers who lives only a few blocks away posted on Facebook about the incident. The post was reaching out to others in the community asking if they too heard this big boom. So far, the leading theory, believe it or not, is meteorites crashing into the Earth. The more plausible scenario is that these booms may be caused by high pressure gases being more alarming than the ocean floor cracking open to me. I don't know why. Is that alarming? That feels alarming. Kraken? Is that you? Number 5. Hidden ocean heat. If you put your ear up to a seashell, if you listen closely, apparently you can hear global warming. Yeah, I'm not kidding. How depressing is this one? Back in 1991, scientists lowered these massive speakers, like these nightclub subwoofers, into the waters at Heard Island. Really? Okay, I see what you guys did there. These speakers emitted low-frequency sounds all across our oceans. These signals were later picked up by receivers near California and Bermuda. And these signals contained information on the temperatures of our oceans. Our oceans absorb more than 90% of energy left over from global warming. There were a few scientists who at the time were also concerned about how these low-frequency sounds may be affecting ocean life. Yeah, what does that sound like to a beluga whale? Not great, I assume. Number 4, snapping shrimp. If you hear this in the ocean, you're not gonna have a great time, my friend. I have to include the sounds from a snapping shrimp because for its size, it creates a sonic boom. It's extremely impressive.
Ow, that really hurt.
They're often found in coral reefs, oyster reefs, and these little guys, these pistol shrimp, they hit their prey at 100 kilometers an hour. In doing so, a large air bubble is created, and because this Mike Tyson shrimp is so quick with the jabs, the following pop is around 200 decibels. The sound alone stuns their prey, or if they're lucky, certain Canadian believes that these noises are electromagnetic waves coming from the northern lights. Ah yes, the beautiful northern lights. It's pretty loud, huh? Like what? I didn't know this at all. Northern lights are loud. The apocalypse sure is beautiful. And finally, number 1, the buzzer. No, I'm not talking about Kawhi Leonard when he, we're still thinking about it. That's a good one. This one legit gives me goosebumps. That's why I'm gonna end the video off. We're jumping out of the sea for this one, so lose those goggles. In the 1980s, when a radio tower just north of Moscow began transmitting these random and creepy sounding beeps and bloops, come 1992, these sounds began to change. That year, it suddenly switched to a buzzing sound, short and sweet, around 25 times a minute. These strange routines would be interrupted once every few weeks by a male voice, which would then be reciting a string of numbers and words, like he was trying to reset the Winter Soldier or something like that. And to make things more creepy here, in June of 2010, and also in August of the same year, the station briefly stopped sending out signals altogether. Maybe they ran out of battery, I don't know, maybe they needed a lozenge break, some lemon tea. All that talking that entire time, that's gotta damage the vocals. At the end of August in 2010, the station again changed and there began to be different shuffling sounds and thuds that can now be heard in the background. And often these little snippets of the dance of little swans from Swan Lake would also be interrupted into the broadcast. Yeah, if any secret agents are listening listening to this, I want in. Whatever operation this is going on in the ocean in a submarine, send me Swan Lake Mission Impossible briefings. Knock twice, I'll do a pirouette. Let's do it. A pirouette kicks some bad guy's head off. Easy.
Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot, we have Jupiter's green dot. NASA recently dropped this gem of a photo captured by their heroic Juno mission during its 31st close flyby of Jupiter back in December 2020. Now, let me set the stage for you. The photo showcases Jupiter's colossal swirling patterns. Yes, it's a gas giant, mind you, but right in the center, an otherworldly circle of vivid green light is glowing away, stealing the show. That radiant ring is as out of place as finding a disco ball at the Royal Ball. Against the backdrop of Jupiter's dark blues and browns, it stands out like a sore thumb. Clearly, it's not your ordinary part of the planet's natural attire. It looks like someone playing with glow sticks in space, or maybe a space party gone wild, but there aren't any extraterrestrial party animals to blame for this interplanetary glow show. So who's behind the curtain? As it turns out, this mysterious green spot on the planet just might be a bolt of lightning striking near Jupiter's north pole. We know that here on Earth, lightning dances in the skies thanks to our water clouds illuminating our world with its white-hot flashes, but on Jupiter, things get a tad more frightening. Lightning prefers to show off its skills in clouds infused with an ammonia water solution, and it tends to throw its electrifying parties mostly around the planet's polar regions. This green spot just might be coming for the title that the infamous red spot holds. In our number 9 spot today, we have Space Roar. You would think that space is silent, right? I mean, it's a vacuum, so it should be, but that is not the case. It is said that the entire universe is alive with sound, and there is a thing called space roar. Space roar apparently isn't an everyday sound, and is rather these strange radio signals that scientists have detected throughout space. These signals are so loud that they are able to drown out other signals, which can be quite annoying for the scientists who are trying to study and learn. While we know what the sound is, we don't know where it is coming from. Apparently some people believe it was coming from the leftover radiation from early stars, and some others believe it is from the gases swirling around the galaxy in clusters, but at the end of the day, no one is really sure, and it remains one very noisy mystery. In our number 8 spot today, we have the lone survivor. This is an unexplained signal that was first detected in 2003 when astronomers were using a massive telescope in order to re-examine 200 different areas of the sky. I say re-examine because these were areas where there was once a signal that was detected coming from them, and they were taking a look back to see if they could detect the same signal again. During this re-examination, they found all of the signals had disappeared except for one. The signal didn't only stick around either, but it got stronger. This signal is coming from between the constellations of Pisces and Aries, and the curious thing about this location is that it resides in a place where there are no known obvious planets or stars. To make things even more mysterious, there are scientists who believe that the frequency this signal is in is the frequency alien life would be most likely to use if they were trying to contact us. I have no idea what leads them to that theory, but it felt too interesting to exclude. So while there are other possibilities of what these signals are or where they are coming from, it is quite an interesting piece of information and is something that definitely deserves more looking into. In our number 7 spot today, we have Saturn's rings. Saturn is well known for its impressive and stunning rings. I mean, they are the most extensive out of all of the planets in our solar system, and while seeing photos and diagrams is lovely, meeting the rings in person might not be so much of a pleasant experience. These rings consist of a ton of particles that range in size from micrometers to meters, and they are mostly made up of water ice, but they have some trace components of rocky material as well. In December of 2016, the Cassini spacecraft, which spent years studying Saturn and its icy moons, flew through one of these impressive rings, and the spacecraft's radio and plasma wave science instrument was able to pick up the sound of what crossing one of these rings sounds like. At first, it's just the regular staticky sound of being close to the planet. But then as the crossing happens, things get a little louder and a little more rocky. The The influx in sound is due to the particles bombarding the craft as it flies through the air. It is incredibly cool to hear this and get a bit of a closer look into what it's like to be near the planet, but it is also just another perfect example of how terrifying and absolutely relentless space can be. In our number 6 spot today we have the Little Green Men. Let's journey back to the year of 1967, where astrophysics met the unexpected in a very dazzling discovery. Jocelyn Bell Burnell found herself analyzing data from a radio telescope, and within the sea of information she stumbled upon a symphony of regular, rapid pulses. These enigmatic pulses, now known as pulsars, danced through the cosmos with such precision and consistency that they sparked wild speculation. They were playfully dubbed LGM, or Little Green Men, igniting dreams of extraterrestrial contact. The scientific community, usually composed, was momentarily shaken. Could these pulsars be cosmic Morse code from distant civilizations? The tantalizing possibility of interstellar communication sent a shiver of excitement and trepidation through their dedicated ranks. Alas, as the dust settled, it became clear that the pulsars were not intergalactic messages, but rather the cosmic choreography of rapidly rotating neutron stars. These dense remnants of stellar explosions emitted focused beams of radiation, creating a rhythmic celestial light show that captivated our human minds. In our number 5 spot today we have the Black Knight satellite. This story begins in the intriguing era of the 1950s, where tales of a peculiar satellite lurking in Earth's orbit began to captivate the collective imagination. Dubbed the Black Knight satellite, this alleged extraterrestrial artifact has remained an enigma feature in the annals of cosmic lore. It is said to have been associated with perplexing radio signals that curious amateur radio operators claim to have intercepted. These signals, like whispers from the great beyond, hinted at a presence beyond our terrestrial realm. As with any enigma, skeptics emerged, attributing these signals to mere earthly influence or technical glitches. However, the allure of the Black Knight satellite endured, its mystery captivating those who dare to question the boundaries of our cosmic knowledge. Conspiracy theories have blossomed, weaving intricate narratives around this enigmatic satellite. Some speculate that it is a remnant of an advanced alien civilization, an extraterrestrial sentinel silently observing our planet. Others ponder its purpose, wondering whether it holds hidden knowledge or cosmic secrets that could forever alter our understanding of the universe. In our number 4 spot today we have the solar system exit. What we are about to listen to isn't a real-time space recording, but it is an audiograph of the Voyager's plasma wave science observations that spanned several months between 2012 and 2013. The readings are important because this is the first time when scientists believe that the Voyager left our solar system's heliopause, making it the first human-made object to leave our solar system. It's a huge step for science and space exploration, but the sounds that accompany it are anything but comforting. I mean, come on. That horror movie style shrieking sound on the way out into deep space isn't exactly what we want to hear. I'm not entirely sure what the source of that sound is, but let's all just hope that it isn't something sinister. In our number 3 spot today we have the Venus signal. For many years we have been trying to figure out just how Earth and Venus turned out to be so different. Venus is Earth's closest neighbor and they are quite similar in size and density, but that's about it. Venus has a thick, toxic atmosphere that is filled with carbon dioxide. There are thick yellow clouds of sulfuric acid that trap heat on the planet, which has caused temperatures that are hot enough to melt lead on the planet. It's the hottest planet in our solar system, and it's not even the closest one to the sun. This is all exactly why, during a brief swing by Venus, when NASA's Parker solar probe detected a radio signal that was signifying that the spacecraft had flown through the planet's upper atmosphere, it was exceptionally interesting. This was the first direct measurement of the atmosphere of Venus in about 30 years, and it showed that it was significantly different from before. A new study published showed that Venus's upper atmosphere undergoes some very interesting and very confusing changes over a solar cycle, which is the sun's 11-year activity cycle. This could potentially give us clues as to how and why the Earth and Venus are so different. Because of the harsh climate on the planet, spacecrafts have only been able to survive at most for a couple hours there, so there's still so much mystery surrounding what exactly exactly goes on Venus. In our number 2 spot today we have the BLC-1. As astronomers were searching for the existence of life beyond our planet, they spotted something that piqued their interest. This was a radio signal that has yet to be explained that was coming from the direction of the star that is closest to the Sun, Proxima Centauri. The reason why this specific radio signal was so exciting and promising is because this star has at least 2 planets that orbit it, and one is thought to be temperate and rocky, like Earth. The observations in which they picked up these signals took place between April and May of 2019, and they were detected by Breakthrough Listen, which is a decade-long search for alien broadcasts. They were using Australia's Parkes Observatory when they made their discovery, and they explained that throughout their search, every now and then finding something strange is expected, but this detection was more unusual because it was a strange discovery that required them to then begin planning next steps, which does not happen very often. And finally, in our number 1 spot today we have light shifts. In 2015, a Penn State astronomer named Jason Wright explained that there were pretty erratic and spontaneous shifts in the light that was coming from a star that was newly discovered. This star sits about 1,280 light years away from us on Earth, and these shifts were very similar to as if something was passing in front of our view of the star briefly before passing through. Scientists weren't able to connect this to any exoplanets or anything like that, which we could understand, and this is what led Jason to quite an interesting theory. He stated that it is possible that the shifts are caused by massive objects passing in front of the star in a kind of orbit, like an array of massive satellites, or a similar kind of structure, like the type of thing that would be produced by an intelligent or civilized life form.
Starting off this countdown we have the pain. Okay, this one is hella freaky, but a number of people have claimed that they felt a weird sensation either just before or after someone close to them has passed. Let's take psychiatrist Bernard Bateman's story for example. Apparently one day he experienced this weird strong feeling in his throat. It felt like he was choking. Well, later that day he learned that his father had choked to death on his own blood. The time that his dad died was the same time he felt this choking sensation himself. Isn't that crazy? It's freaky. In our 9th spot, we have the dreams. Has anyone here ever experienced night terrors before? If you have, you know how freaking scary they are and how real they feel. Well, it's said that spirits will try to communicate with you through your dreams. Malicious spirits or demonic entities, they will torment you through your dreams. Either you will have a horrifying reoccurring dream, or there will be reoccurring themes like death, murder, you name it. Or the demons will play into your biggest fears. Let's say you're deathly afraid of spiders and snakes. They'll manipulate your dreams so that's what you're dreaming about. Or even worse, the demon itself will appear to you in your dream being like, I'm coming for you. This has happened in real life to a number of people. Sadly, most of these victims develop insomnia because they're too afraid to sleep. Others have taken their lives because they just can't take it anymore. Moving on to number 8, we have the messages. Imagine receiving a text message, email, or phone call from a deceased friend or relative. Well, a number of people have claimed that this has happened to them. The first story involves a woman named Mary, whose mother died of cancer a couple of years ago. Months later, on Mary's birthday, she received a message on her phone from her mom. When she opened it up, it was a voice note. The voice note was a recording of her mom singing happy birthday. But here's the thing, her mom's phone was deactivated, so how on earth was this message sent? Also, her mom was dead, so how did she send a voice message? Another freaky story comes from a man named Tim. Tim claims that his deceased wife was communicating to him through phone calls. Almost every night, Tim would get a call around 9:05. The time that his wife passed away. When he answers the phone, all he hears is silence, but he knows that this is from his wife. The phone call lasts a minute until the clock changes to 9:06. I mean, in a way it's sweet, but also it's just really creepy. Coming in at number 7, we have the wild animals. Getting a surprise visit from some furry animals can be quite cool, as long as it's like friendly animals like bunnies or rabbits, even deer. Maybe though, every time you talk about your deceased loved one, you notice a bunny hopping in your yard. This could be a sign that your loved one is near, or maybe their spirit is now in that bunny. It's a bad sign, however, if dead animals appear around your house, like dead crows, bunnies, or cats on your doorstep, etc. That's a bad sign. Even dead parts of an animal. In some cases it could be stray cats or foxes leaving these, or it could be an evil spirit, or it's an omen, someone sending you a sign that something bad is going to happen to you. In our 6th spot, we have the odd coincidences. Have you ever been going on about your day when you notice some weird patterns or coincidences happening to you? For example, maybe you've been thinking of your deceased grandmother when all of a sudden you get a whiff of her favorite perfume. Then later that day you decide to go buy that perfume and the clerk cashing you out has the same name as your grandmother. That's a sign that she's there with you. But not all coincidences are as pleasant as this one. One guy shared his freaky story with this. So he claims that when he was younger, he almost died after falling into the subway train tracks, but a man in a trench coat ended up saving his life. His name was Edward S. Years later, the boy, now a man, moves into a new house. While exploring the attic, he discovers that it was previously owned by Edward S. But sadly, he passed away after falling down a flight of stairs in the basement. As soon as he learned that his savior lived in the house that he just bought, he started having dreams and visions about him. One of the visions involved seeing Edward getting pushed down the stairs by his neighbor. Immediately, the man was like, okay, I think Edward was murdered by his neighbor. And guess what? In the end, he was right. Edward was sending him signals from the afterlife. It's just crazy how they kind of both saved each other in a way. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the flickering lights. Next time you're walking home in the middle of the night and the street lights above you start to flicker, maybe take that as a sign to run the hell home. Because spirits have the power to manipulate electricity. They can send signals by flicking lights on and off. So maybe a flickering street light is a sign that you're not alone on that dark, sketchy street. In fact, one woman claimed that she had a conversation with a spirit that was haunting her house through the flickering of a light bulb. She told the spirit to flicker the light once for yes and twice for no, and through that she was able to talk to the spirit. Moving on to number 4, we have the feathers. Now I learned this years ago from my friend's mom and it's always stuck with me ever since. Apparently, feathers are a sign that a spirit is there with you. So if you find a white feather in a spot where it makes no sense to be, then it's a sign that someone is there watching over you. But let's say you find one on the floor next to your down feathered jacket. Well, obviously the feather fell out of your jacket, so that doesn't count. That's why it said it has to be in a place where it doesn't make sense to be. Here's the thing though, if you see a black feather, then that's bad. That means that a demon or evil entity is around you. In particular, you should be scared if you find a black feather sticking directly up from the ground by your house. In this case, do not touch the feather and go get yourself cleansed. Coming in at number 3, we have the manipulation of electronics. Like I said before, spirits have the power to manipulate electricity. They also have the power to manipulate certain electrical devices like TVs and radios, and sometimes even battery-powered toys. There are 2 main stories that I want to talk about today. One involves a cursed Elmo doll. One year, a family got an Elmo doll for Christmas, and a spirit clearly took a liking for that red-hugging doll because during the middle of the night, it would speak as if someone pressed it. The doll would all be like, ha ha ha, that tickles, you know? The family decided to take out the batteries, and guess what? The doll would still chuckle and laugh. Dude, I tossed that Elmo out the window so fast. Another family had a similar experience, but this time with a battery-powered train. On a number of occasions, they caught the train moving around their house on its own. Clearly, the ghost was a fan of Thomas and Friends. In our 2nd spot, we have the stank smells. If you've seen the Conjuring movies, then chances are you already know about this point. But it's said that evil spirits or demons can be identified with bad smells like sulfur or rotten eggs. If the smell comes out of nowhere then leaves out of nowhere, either someone tooted or a demon was just in your presence. Let's take a look at the Perrin family, the family that the first Conjuring movie was based off of. According to the family, their house would smell like rotting flesh. First of all, how did they even know what rotting flesh smelled like in the first place? Anyway, when Lorraine Warren got a whiff of it, she knew that they were being haunted. And when the smell was coming from Carolyn Perrin herself, Lorraine knew she was possessed by a demon. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the paranormal activity. A clear sign that someone is with you from the afterlife is if spooky stuff happens around you. Like objects moving on its own, you feel someone's presence by you, you hear voices, doors slam on their own, etc. Now, if this happens frequently and at a certain time, then the spirit might be trying to tell you something. For example, let's go back to the Perrin family haunting case again. Every morning at 5:15 they would wake up to their bed shaking. Every morning, always at that time. Another example would be the story of Grace. A woman named Grace moved into a home. Every night at 12:43 she would hear loud banging noises and sometimes screaming. Well, back in the day, the owner of the house was killed in her sleep at 12:43 at night. Starting off this countdown, we have the static. There's a lot of stories out there about dead people calling their loved ones. It's freaky how many people have experienced this, just like this next person. So their aunt passed away from a number of health complications. A couple days later at around 7 a.m., her grandma, which was her aunt's mother, got a phone call. The caller ID said that it was their aunt calling. What was weird is that she normally called around 7 a.m. every day. But now since she was dead, they were pretty confused. But they answered the phone and all they heard was static. They believed that it was the aunt trying to get in contact with her mom again. Moving on at number 9, we have pennies from heaven. Have you ever heard of the term pennies from heaven? And I'm not talking about the song and movie. Well, some use this phrase to refer to ghosts using coins to communicate with you. Maybe you wake up and find a penny on the ground by your desk and you're like, that's weird, how did that get there? Well, it might have been placed there by a spirit trying to get in contact with you. But why pennies? Well, the copper in which pennies are made up of are considered a conductor for electromagnetic fields, which are said to be emitted by spirits. So it's easy for them to manipulate pennies. A number of people have reported finding random pennies around their house after the passing of a loved one. This could be a sign that they are still there with you and are reaching out. Too bad here in Canada, they discontinued pennies, so whoops. In our 8th spot, we have the doctor. According to this woman named Lauren C., her grandmother was a pediatrician from Puerto Rico, so a lot of people just called her La Doctora. When she passed away a few years ago, she believed that her grandmother reached out and left a note for her and her mom. So they were staying at a hotel when they found a note left on their dresser. The note read, "Contactos con los muertos." I'm so sorry, I know I butchered this, but it means contact with the dead, and it was signed La Doctora. How wild is that? They believed that this was from their grandmother, letting them know that she's still around. In our 7th spot, we have the EVP. EVPs are devices that ghost hunters use to get in contact with spirits. It's like a voice box for the spirit so that they can manipulate this device and use it to form words. Well, a woman named Kimberly H. decided to use one a week after her uncle died. The first thing that the spirit said was John, which is her dad's name. Then it got weirder because the second thing it said was brother. So she believes that she was talking to her uncle who was trying to get in contact with his brother John, aka her dad. Unfortunately, Kimberly was too scared to continue on with the EVP device, so she never got to find out what his message to his brother was. In our 6th spot today, we have Sorry. This story was posted by Absolutely Insane Geek on Reddit. According to him, when his dad was about 15 years old, he decided to use an Ouija board with his friends. As they were calling on a spirit, they actually got in contact with one, and it used the board to spell out the dad's name. The next thing it spelled out was sorry. The spirit was apologizing to the dad because his favorite uncle had recently passed away. In fact, it might have been the uncle himself reaching out to him. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Help Me. This next story comes from Juby Love. So one day she was calling her mom when the call got picked up and all she heard was static. She said hello multiple times, but there was nothing. Then that's when she heard someone whisper on the other end of the line. She listened in carefully and she heard a woman whispering, help me, repeatedly. Now she freaked out thinking that her mom was in trouble. The call ended, but she kept calling back. A few calls later, her mom answered. She claims that she never got the call until now since she was out of service. So who was the woman on the other line that answered the phone and needed help? In our 4th spot today, we have the grandmother's warning. When Christian's family went out of town for spring break and left him alone, he thought, hey, what better time than to use an Ouija board? So he was in his kitchen using the board by himself when all of a sudden the kitchen sink turned on. When he asked who it was that did that, the board spelt out Renee, which was his great-grandmother's name. Then for some reason, the planchette kept moving to the numbers 3 and 4. Well, his great-grandmother was 34 when she passed away. When he told his mom what happened, she freaked out. Apparently, Renee hated Ouija boards and she was very, very against them. So she thinks that Renee was using the board to warn her family to stop using it. Even with her being dead, she still found a way to scold her family. In our third spot today, we have the party phantom. So this next individual, Jess Gals, shared a story on behalf of her friend. Her friend had just moved into a new house and decided to throw a party. While at the party, she had a little too much to drink and ended up leaving some drunken voicemails for her friends. The next day, they all were having a hoot listening to her drunk messages, until they heard something very scary at the back of one. In one of the voicemails, they heard this very scary, aggressive voice yell, "Vivian." A couple of days later, they were talking to their neighbors and found out that the previous tenant of their house was a lady named Vivian. She had died in that house. See, that's why you do your research on the house before you buy it and move into it. You gotta make sure no people die in the house and that it's not haunted. In our second spot, we have the poem. Now this story is absolutely wild. It was shared by Reddit user Kazurli on behalf of her mom. According to the Reddit user, her mom was very close to her grandmother. Just before she passed away, her gran bought her a book full of poems. When she did pass, she randomly found the book sitting open in plain sight. The book was open to a page called "Do Not Weep at My Grave." From then on, her mom would read her that story every night for months on end until they both felt better about the grandma's passing. Fast forward to several years later, her mom found the poem book and decided to revisit that passage. However, it was no longer in the book. She flipped through it madly, but the poem called "Do Not Weep at My Grave" was not there. In fact, it wasn't even in the table of contents. It was never in the book at all. So they both think that this was a sign from her gran as a way to help them deal with their grief. And in our number one spot today, we have Pat. While in college, Mary Kay and her sorority sisters decided to play with an Ouija board one night. To make things spookier, they took a board to the oldest frat house on campus. At first, they were all fooling around with the board, and that was until it kept spelling out Pat, 18, Keg, and NU, which made no sense to any of them. They just thought that one of the sisters was fooling around and moving the planchette. That was until later on when they found out that the house that they were in once was named Sigma NU. But it was shut down in the 80s because an 18-year-old freshman named Pat died from alcohol poisoning during a kegger. Remember what the board spelt out? Pat, 18, Keg, NU. That story just gave me chills all over, man.
And we're starting off this list with the doll. Ouija boards and dolls, not a good combo. And if the story is true, it makes that even more clear. A Reddit user named Jake Nichols recounted a story of a time his cousin and his friends decided to give a Ouija board a spin. Now, they had this porcelain doll sitting in the next room over, face down on the bed. At one point during the session, they made contact with something, and it listed off Jake's cousin's social security number, which apparently nobody in the room knew except for him. Then the board spelled out the word doll. They rushed to the next room, and when they opened the door, there was the doll, only now it was standing upright in the middle of the room. The group ended up burning the board after that. Next up, we have Carol Sue Alvaker. This was a very disturbing case that played out in February of 2001. A 53-year-old Oklahoma woman named Carol Sue Alvaker had been playing with a Ouija board with her daughter and two granddaughters. And during this Ouija board session, Carol claimed that she had been sent a message from the beyond, telling her that her daughter's husband was a demon that had to be slain. And Carol Sue ended up doing just that. She stabbed her son-in-law, Brian Roach, in the chest, hid the knife, and they gathered the kids, hopped in a vehicle, and attempted an escape. And Carol Sue then tried crashing the car in an attempt to take all of their lives, believing her two young granddaughters to also be evil. Now, luckily nobody died here. There were only minor injuries, but Carol Sue ended up stripping naked, hopped over the highway median barrier, and ran into the woods. Cops found her almost immediately, and she, along with her daughter, were both arrested. Number 8, we have the death of Ernest Turley. This story goes all the way back to 1933. 14-year-old Maddie and her mother Dorothy Turley had been messing around on a Ouija board, and during one session they received a message from a spirit saying that Ernest had to die. Now, because this case is from so long ago, there are various versions of this message and who actually received it, but the most common version is that it was Dorothy who interpreted the message and convinced her daughter to carry out the act, saying the board told her that she needed to be free of Ernest in order to marry a handsome cowboy. Yeah. Sounds like something a spirit from another realm would request of some woman they have no connection with whatsoever. I don't know who you are. I'm a ghost in a completely different plane of existence. But you know what, lady? I think you need a handsome cowboy in your life. That's what I've crossed over into this world in order to tell you. There are also claims that Dorothy had started using the Ouija board regularly after the family had moved into an isolated cabin in the mountains of Arizona, consulting it and then making odd demands based on the supposed messages she received. Anyway, this all culminated with her daughter, Maddie, shooting her unsuspecting father to death because, according to Dorothy, the board could not be denied. Next up, we have Gary Gilmore. Gary Gilmore was sentenced to death after taking the life of 2 men in Utah in 1977. And Gilmore's reason for his crimes? Well, according to him, his family had been cursed after his mother had made contact with a demon years ago while using a Ouija board. According to Gary, his mother Bessie opened a Pandora's box of sorts when she unwittingly contacted a dark spirit who claimed it would bring misfortune to the family forever. At a young age, Gary began having terrible nightmares, and one of his aunts ended up having an accident, leaving her paralyzed. Another one of his aunts was brutally lost her life. Bessie's mother-in-law apparently lost her mind after performing a seance in an attempt to uncover what the cause of these horrible events were, and Gilmore, he just had an unstable upbringing, it seems, but he was ultimately executed for his crimes that same year. Number 6, the Carroll family. Okay, folks, cover your ears for this one if you don't like bad stuff happening to dogs. And if you do like bad stuff happening to dogs, I don't want to know you. So in this horrible case, which happened in England in 2014, on Christmas Eve, mind you, Merry Christmas, a lad named Paul Carroll was playing with the Ouija board when he apparently received a message from the beyond telling him that his dog, oh geez, had been possessed by a demon. So he drowned his demonic dog before dismembering it and hiding it in a drain. Sorry guys, I warned you. And it didn't end there. Don't worry though, no animal cruelty for this next part. So Paul was awaiting sentencing, and his wife Margaret thought it would be a great idea to use the board again. So she and her daughter did just that, and this time the board told them that they were going to die the next day. So Margaret convinced her daughter to join her in downing an overdose of prescription drugs before attempting to set their house on fire. Luckily, they both did live and were sentenced to jail for 4 years for arson. Next up, we have a story I'm just gonna call Cash. This was posted to Reddit by user throwit_amita. It goes like this. My mom and aunt used a board after their dad died. He had remarried, but had told his daughters that he was leaving them a few things in his will, including some money. His second wife was the executor and was saying he hadn't left them money, etc., etc. Anyway, Mom and her sister thought it was possible the money wasn't left to them after all, like second wife said. But my aunt was really strapped for cash, and they felt like it was also possible second wife was withholding info and money. You think? They apparently managed to get their dad via the Ouija board and asked him whether he had left the money in his will. It spelt out a 3-letter acronym for a bank and then a series of numbers. Turns out he did have a bank account with money in it intended for his daughters. The account matched the bank acronym and account number. This one spooked me because the details were a surprise to Mom and my aunt. I don't know how they could have gotten that info out of thin air. At number 4, we have the love triangle. It's really less of a love triangle and more of a love mess. But anyway, this case took place in 1930 in Buffalo, New York. A 66-year-old woman named Nancy Bowen wanted to know who took the life of her son. So she enlisted the help of her friend Leela Jimerson and a Ouija board. They asked the board who the culprit was, and the board spelled out she did it, accompanied by an address. Nancy Brown made her way to the address, and when the woman Clotilde Marchand answered the door, she was met with a hammer to the cranium before having a chloroform-soaked rag shoved into her mouth. Now, the reason as to why this happened has nothing to do with a demonic spirit, really. As it turned out, Nancy Brown's friend, Lila, who helped her with the Ouija board session, had been having an affair with Clotilda's husband, Henry Marchand, and wanted his pesky wife out of the way so she could have him all to herself. She had forced the planchette to spell out Marchand's address. Henry was a real a-hole though, claiming in court that he had too many lovers to count before going on to marry the 18-year-old niece of his now deceased wife. Classy stuff. Number 3, David. In the summer of 1987 in Orlando, Florida, two friends, Anthony Allen Hall and Daniel Paul Bowen, along with their girlfriends Bunny Dixon, great stripper name, and Elizabeth Rebecca Town, had made contact with the spirit of a young boy named David through a Ouija board. According to them, David cast a demonic spell on the group and outlined a plan for them to steal a car and some cash in order to fund their trip to Virginia, where they would join the circus. Perfectly reasonable. So the group did just that. They didn't make it to the circus though. Elizabeth and Bunny Dixon posed as hitchhikers as their boys Anthony and Daniel hid in the bushes. A car pulled over, at which point the two men popped out of hiding, threatening the driver with a gun. He was bound and thrown in the trunk. They got a whopping $120 off him. Daniel ended up taking the owner's life before the group was apprehended. He got the death penalty. And at second place we have the cemetery. Cemeteries and Ouija boards. Again, two things that do not mix unless you want something creepy to happen, and I imagine if you're using a Ouija board, you do. So I guess they do mix in a way. Anyway, this story was posted to Reddit by user Spartan0618, and I really hope it's true because it's a great campfire kind of tale. The user wrote the following: "We were in a cabin in the woods, several hundred yards away, an old cemetery laid almost out of sight. Had it not been for the little outdoor excursion I had taken the morning before, I wouldn't have known it was there. The only two people who knew it was there were my cousin and me. Late in the day, we pulled out an old Ouija board from a closet. We messed around for a while. Then one of our friends decided to ask for its name. It started with an A, then they asked how it died. I can't remember that part, but then they asked what year it died and where it was buried. It said something along the lines of, in the year 18-something, I died in a fire. My body is located in a cemetery down the road. My cousin and I froze. We gave each other a long stare. We told our friends about the cemetery and we went to explore it. Sure enough, there was a grave with his info on it." Finally, we have my Ouija experience. Now, I will say, even after this, I would not call myself a believer in stuff like this, alright? It was kind of weird, and it's something me and my cousin still bring up on occasion, but there could be a rational explanation. But anyway, here's what happened. It was back in high school. I was about 16 at the time. My cousin was in town, so I took him to a little party at my buddy's place. It wasn't really a party, it was just us hanging out. We decided to mess around with a Ouija board. At one point, my friend, whose place we were at, I'll just call him Alex for the purposes of this, started having a strange reaction. It reminded me a bit of a panic attack. He was breathing heavily. I felt his heart rate was up. There was a bookshelf that fell over. I'm not sure if someone bumped into it. You know, in our minds, it fell over on its own. But anyway, his older sister came down and brought him upstairs and was like, "You guys shouldn't be messing around with this stuff." And then we pretty much left. Now, after this experience, me, Alex, and another friend in the group that I had a crush on at the time, hope she doesn't see this. I don't know why I had to relay that information, but anyway, we started using the Ouija board in other locations to try and make more spooky stuff happen. Nothing really did. I remember we used it one night on a schoolyard, and the message we got was something like, so, you know, at least we weren't forcing anything. What happened that time, and then we wanted to see if the board would do anything. But anyway.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Sky Eye 2022. In a list of scandalous signals, we got to start off with a recent Sky Eye observation. Yeah, just a couple of weeks ago, China's Sky Eye telescope picked up what they're enjoying their day when, you guessed it, they heard this loud boom, something shocked them. It actually shook it. So it's not that. It's not tinnitus, that's the high pitched sound, and this is very low. If I put my fingers on my ears, it stops, so I know it's not in my head. Side note, that's terrifying. Imagine seeing your family and they're all like plugging their ears. They're like, do you hear it? Hear what? What am I doing? What? It's commonly heard in Hawaii, Britain, North America, pretty much everywhere all over the world. We have no idea. Some have called it the Windsor hum, which is insanely close to where I am right now. Don't stalk me. Hence why I think that I've heard it. So now I point the microphone to you for this one. Have you ever heard the hum? If so, where were you? Where do you live? Reports of the hum go back to New Mexico as early as 1991, so I feel like it's not going anywhere soon if you haven't heard it for yourself. There it is again. I knew it. Maybe it's a bee, who knows. And finally, number 1, the boom. In early 2021, San Diego residents reacted to what sounded like a sonic boom, which is pretty alarming. Especially if you watch Top Gun Maverick, you're like, what is that? Well, it's been heard 3 times since the initial report, and many still have questions, obviously. Windows are shaking, doors were rattling, all of San Diego heard and felt this thing in their chest. It's like when you go to a concert and you can like feel it in your chest. It's kind of like that, except middle of the day when you don't want to feel things in your chest. But what was it? Was it an earthquake? Being in San Diego and all residents are used to earthquakes, but this was an entirely different feeling. Also, it helps to know that no earthquakes were reported at the time, so definitely can check that off our list. The Marines certainly didn't take responsibility for it, and if it wasn't sonic boom from a plane, then, well, what could it be? If it was a plane ripping overhead, it would be pretty obvious. Plus, they're not allowed to do that kind of stuff that close to the coast, so again, check that off the list. December 28th, 2021, residents were posting their thoughts on Twitter, and one user tweeted, "San Diego is cool," because I'm like, oh wow, I just felt an earthquake, but not actually, it was just a sonic boom. Well, keep an ear open for any more mysterious sonic booms coming from the ocean in 2022. The last one wasn't long ago at all. So if you live in San Diego, drop a comment down below. Must be nice. Drop us a like and a boom, or a thumbs up. We'll take either or. There we go.